Welcome back to Sharpen the Point. We complete our look at the Big 12, breaking down what each team is losing, bringing in for next season, and has returning. In the finale of this conference, we have the prohibitive favorites and likely winners of the Big 12 that outspins everybody, Texas Tech, and I do not complain about it because I think they're a joy to watch. A contender that's changing coaches in Utah with Kyle Whittingham now gone, Morgan Scalley finally taken over, and two teams that I do think should be improved in year two with UCF and West Virginia. I think Rich Rod might have found his Pat White, but we'll break that down in a minute. Starting off with what I believe will be the conference champions, the most well-rounded team, the team that's spending more money than anybody, and they're making good use of it. The Texas Tech Red Raiders. My guy, Bayron Morton, is finally gone. His watch has ended. He did hold them back. He was not the prospect that he ended up thinking we thought he would be early on in his career. I think mainly due to injuries just kind of wearing down on him. Will Hammond probably would have been the heir apparent had he not gotten hurt. Everybody's kind of believed that he's showed flashes when taking over for Bayron. He's more mobile. Bayron was mobile early in his career, but ultimately it just kind of never landed due to the injuries. Hammond, similarly, having injury issues. They are the same size, which is insane. But with the question marks surrounding Hammond and the injury, they needed to go out and get somebody. They were heavily linked to Levitt early on. I still think that he was kind of the backup option for them. He was never really in play there personally. Brendan Sorsby was always the front runner. He was the guy I mocked to them as soon as the portal, the report started opening up that he was coming out. His girlfriend obviously playing volleyball there. He's a very similar comp to Will Hammond. Very mobile quarterback. He can scoot. I don't particularly trust his arm overall. He's fine at throwing the football, and he's going to have his best weaponry around him. He made the most with the Cincinnati team that lacked kind of a top-end weapon, but he's very mobile, and that's going to be the thing that helps him. Will Hammond's health will matter in the long run, but Sorsby should have the job for this season, and I believe they do have an eye on Hammond to be the long-term solution for the next couple seasons after this. Running back-wise, I will be honest. I think this might be one of, if not the deepest rooms in the country. They really expected when they went and got Quentin Joyner last offseason that he was going to be the starting back coming over from USC. He tore his knee up about a week before the season, and Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams were nothing short of unbelievably good. Dickey pounded it up the middle. Just time and time again, was able to get yardage. Now, I will say what he did do in the Oregon game, he did not rely on his physicality. I did not like the way he looked in that one. He kept trying to bounce it outside instead of just taking the yardage that was there. He kept trying to look for big chunk plays, and I felt like that got the offense off schedule, which ended up hurting them massively in that playoff game. So that's something he's going to need to work on. I still think Joyner gets worked in and probably takes on more of the Jacoby Williams role and maybe can take away some Dickey stuff and ends up being the top guy in the room. Reportedly, from what I've been told, Jacoby Williams probably moves more into a maybe even a slot receiver gadget player role for this season. They're going to have all three on the field because they're massively talented. Williams, you have to keep on the field because he is an absolutely explosive weapon, very talented out of the backfield, catching the football, and very explosive in the run game. I just think that Joyner presents the same things that Dickey and Williams does. He has the explosiveness of Williams with the power ability of Dickey, and he's the best combination of the two. Does that play out this season? Does Joyner come back fully healthy? All questions, but questions that they're simply upside for this offense, given that Dickey and Williams were so productive a year ago, combining for nearly 2,000 yards rushing, almost 600 yards receiving, and north of 20 touchdowns. Williams' return game aspect not to be underrated. And they're going to continue bringing in just absolute studs. Ashton Roden will add some good depth to the room as well. Wide receiver wise, I was personally a big Reggie Virgil guy. I played a lot of Caleb Douglas, each kind of mixed in, matched into the system, playing very well a year ago. I thought Koi Eakin was a massive disappointment last season. Now he does return. I hesitate to say that I think the key to the room, but long term, they need Micah Hudson to realize his potential. I am buying into Micah Hudson this offseason. It sounds like there was some attitude issues when he was first at Texas Tech. Then remember he had a little bit of a respite last offseason where he went to Texas A&M, kind of flirted with being there, then came back to Texas Tech. All reports I have from my source says that he's done everything he was supposed to do last season. He did everything the coaching staff asked of him. So I expect that he is going to be thrust into a bigger role this season. And to some extent, it's proven with the fact they didn't really go out and get a guy that I feel can outpace Hudson. Eakin's going to remain in that balance, like slot role. He'll mix in and outside kind of here and there. But Hudson's the one like coming in and should step into one of the Douglas Virgil roles. And he has all the talent in the world to be amazing at it. So I'm buying Micah Hudson this offseason. Dante Lee, interesting prospect out of Liberty. He's a bigger guy, long speed. I don't think he factors really much into the room other than just kind of mixing and matching in. Malcolm Simmons is the other big guy for me. So Malcolm Simmons, huge prospect, went to Auburn, played kind of second fiddle to Cam Coleman, very poor passing offense. I think we should be buying into these Auburn wide receivers that transferred. Your Perry Thompsons, your Malcolm Simmons, your Cam Colemans. I'm not going to wax poetic right now about Cam Coleman, even though I'm going to continue to put all of my chips into that basket. Malcolm Simmons, I think, finds the field in the Caleb Douglas, Reggie Virgil, one of those spots. And I think your top three ends up being Simmons, Hudson, and Eakin, with Kenny Johnson factoring in fairly heavily. Kenny Johnson, the other transfer coming over from Pitt, played well in that offense, kind of operated as the 1A, 1B every once in a while there, and has played fairly decent. But I would say on a talent skill level, you've got the security blanket that is Eakin, the superstar high skill level of Hudson and Simmons that should make for, I would believe, no drop off in this room. If anything, they may be more talented overall from a route running ability by comparison. Caleb Douglas, more of a like outside, jump ball, back shoulder throw type guy, longer A dot, where Reggie Virgil kind of was able to mix and match with both to an extent. But I think they have a lot more versatility with Eakin, Hudson, Simmons being the combination there. One of the bigger surprises for me of this offense a year ago was Terrence Carter. The tight end played unbelievably well, north of 50 catches, north of 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. He returns, and I believe that safety blanket, the man looks like a bowling ball out there. It's impressive. He's going to be utilized heavily. So they have a variety of weapons between the backfield, the tight end, the wide receivers that they can mix, match on the field. That's going to benefit them massively because it's very hard to defend with all of the weaponry they have. Combining that with a more mobile quarterback situation with Sorsby and his ability to deliver the football, his best throws, in my opinion, are in breaking routes, your slants. He was able to get Cyrus Allen free a good bit on those RPO plays. He didn't do as well hitting Jeff Caldwell, the giraffe that could run. I mean, the man was huge. He did not do very well connecting on his deep, longer throws. So getting those more versatile guys that can hit those in-breaking routes is really going to benefit him. And he has those guys, all three of them, arguably more talented than Cyrus Allen. So he should be able to operate. Terrence Carter is a big upgrade for him over Joe Royer from an athletical skill standpoint. So they should have ample amounts of weaponry to put up points left, right, and center. Offensive line-wise, they spent plenty at this spot. Cash Cleveland, I like. I hope Cash Cleveland gets a shot to start here. I don't know that he will, but I hope he does. I actually really do like Cash Cleveland. I like that they return both tackles in Howard Sampson and Jacob Ponton. And then Sheridan Wilson is one heck of a pass blocker. So losing both guards makes for an interesting situation. I'm hoping Cash Cleveland gets one of the spots. I did like his moxie when he was at Colorado. I think he brings a little nasty streak with him. So he should fit right in. I have no problem with him being there. I don't like the loss of Davion Carter, but what are they going to do? I think Jordan Church likely slides into that right guard spot. I'm hoping Cash Cleveland slides in the left guard spot. I'm really curious to see what happens with Felix Ojo. Top-ranked tackle recruit in the country. They paid a ton of money to get him. Will he supplant somebody? I'm thinking he probably learns from Howard Sampson and then eventually supplant Sampson after this season. But it's nice that they have depth here to be able to plug in a Daniel Sill, plug in a Felix Ojo as your backup that can get some run. So is it possible that somebody plays guard out of that group? Does Daniel Sill slide, kick in, and play one of the guard spots? Maybe. But I'll be interested to see what they do in that spot with the likelihood of it being a Cash Cleveland who's got plenty of play in this conference and Jordan Church sliding into those guard roles with Ojo kind of getting a learning year and being able to kind of extend there. This defense a year ago might have been, this thing was like prime, my days at LSU time, 2010, 2011, 2012. That thing was sick, man. That front four was, you could argue that the front of this defense a year ago could have easily had 3 All-Americans, maybe 4. It was probably the best front four in college football for my money. Now, though, Lee Hunter now gone, had a very stout year. He'll be a very good pick in the draft. Skylar Gill-Howard now gone, also a solid player. But A.J. Holmes returning is a huge keep for those guys. Jaden Cofield, good player, good rotational piece for them. Maybe he ends up stepping into a slightly larger role. But they then brought in just some studs with Jamon Mathis from Kent State, had a nice season a year ago. Trey White was an animal at San Diego State. Could have been one of the best edges available in the portal, and that was a monster get. Bryce Butler, I like a lot out of Washington. Thought he played well in his action a year ago, and he's had some flashes before that. So they brought in more depth, more high-end skill position guys to be able to play with A.J. Holmes. And then they did lose 2 key edge rushers, which is why they went after those guys, and David Bailey and Romello Height. Bailey was the engine of this defense, just absolutely wrecked everything in the backfield. His replacement for me is Adam Trick. Adam Trick was a guy out of Miami of Ohio that could have been a first rounder this year if he had come out. And he's a guy that the Miami of Ohio staff really took care of, made sure he was getting plenty of rest, not getting banged up, knowing that, his future is long-term in the NFL. I think Adam Trick goes for north of he gets double-digit sacks this season. The combination of him and Trey White off the edge is very little drop-off for my money. The loss of Jacob Rodriguez is probably the one that everybody's going to stand out to, and included from the linebacking core. But Ben Roberts is not going to have any problem being the stud in the middle, the guy that is the field general will say. And I love the Austin Romaine pickup out of Kansas State. Pairing him and Roberts is going to be a perfect combination. Keeping John Curry in the mix. I'm not worried about the linebacking core with Rodriguez now gone because of the addition of Romaine. They have gone out, added guys that can play and play at a high level, and they're just putting together what should be an all-star team of guys like Trey White, guys like Austin Romaine, Adam Trick. Like, these are potential, first 2 days of the NFL draft type guys. So they lose high-end guys, but they bring back high-end guys. Defensive back-wise, they're still absolutely loaded. Bryce Pollock, good, very good corner. Very good corner. Amir Boyd, bring him back for a corner spot. They lose a little bit of the depth. Don't get me wrong. Cole Wisniewski, he's a loss. But the keys to this thing were Brendan Jordan, Bryce Pollock, Amir Boyd, those guys coming back, bringing in Davin Martin from UTSA, solid corner, be able to do some things. And if you notice the commitments, Severion Martin at corner, high upside long-term. Donovan Webb, big upside long-term. So they've still got plenty of talent on this back end. I don't expect the defense to drop off much at all. And I think the offense got better with the weaponry and versatility. So I don't think we see any sort of drop off. This should be, again, a playoff team. I think Joey Maguire finally got over the hump. If he hadn't made the playoff a year ago, I think he was in trouble. And I think they were going to end up having to look for different solutions, given the money and what they've been investing into this program. Cody Campbell doing a heck of a job doing his best Phil Knight, T. Boone Pickens. This is one heck of a football team that I would not be shocked makes a very good playoff run this season. Moving on to UCF. It was a questionable year in Scott Frost's return. I did not agree whatsoever with Cam Fancher ever seeing the football field. I think Cam Fancher's awful. I'll be honest. I don't know that Taven Jackson was ever the answer. I don't think Ja'Cory Brown was ever the answer. They just did not have a quarterback worthy of playing. And in fairness, the man has two now. Alonzo Barnett led JMU in the season. He was banged up early in it. Very talented player for my money. I do like him. Do I think he's a great, capable, long, asset for one season? No, not really. I think he's going to be good. He's going to be serviceable. I was a big Keon Jenkins guy at FIU. It's why I bet they're over in the win total. He's obviously the backup. It has to be Barnett who plays in this one. He's the most mobile. He's a decent passer. His outside game is solid. He just is prone to weird mistakes with the football. So would I have preferred him to stay at JMU? Yes. Do I think he was a high-end, mid to upper tier, a Duke, Carolina, any of those position spots? Answer, no. I think UCF is a good landing spot. I thought Wake Forest would have been a good landing spot for him, something that's a more open offense. So he's a guy that's going to do a job. He's going to put a shift in. Very good kid. You're going to like him at UCF. I just don't expect your Mackenzie Milton, Dylan Gabriel stuff from those yesteryears, we'll say. The running back room was a point of contention for me, I'll be honest. Miles Montgomery was fine. He was kind of slow. He was just an adequate player. Jaden Nixon absolutely was explosive to no end and just never got the football, which bothered me a lot. I'll be honest. I kept wanting to take shots on Jaden Nixon, and he just did not get 10 carries a game. And I felt like that was a misread for the coaching staff. He was a threat to take it to the house at any given point in time. Miles Montgomery would get you what was blocked, but that was about it. I would have liked to have seen Nixon get 120 carries personally. That's just where I was. They do upgrade, in my opinion. I thought Duke Watson was talented when he could get on the field for Louisville. Mired in a tough situation behind Isaac Brown, who I feel is one of the more talented backs in the country. And he needed to get out of that situation of that three-headed monster where they were just kind of splitting work. Duke Watson should see the bulk of the workload here. I do expect Landon Chambers to see a good bit of action as well, but Watson should be the feature guy and take over the largest percentage of carries in the backfield. The wide receiver room was, I'm going to try to put it nicely, very poor. I think that's the nicest way to put it. Dwayne Thomas is a okay player. He's a low level P4 wide receiver at best. He's a slot guy. He's going to hit you with the short area targets. He'll be played well in the RPO game as the slot. There should be anybody hit some stuff. That's about it. DJ Black, I felt, was underutilized in this offense, which is probably why he ended up going to South Carolina. He'll be utilized better there. More of an outside, long speed kind of guy. But they're going to need Josh Derry and Jonathan Bibbs, the two transfers, to step in and be able to show some upside. Maybe Derry's the guy that ends up being the one here. Waden Charles had a decent year as a true freshman a year ago. They just needed a relevant passing game, and the quarterbacks weren't able to provide it. And I don't know that the weaponry's there to provide it for the wide receivers either. So that's why I don't agree necessarily with the move for Barnett coming here. I feel like Wake Forest would have fit him a lot better for his long-term aspirations. I'm really going to keep a question mark on the wide receiver room. No doubt about it. I think the best option in the receiving room might be Dylan Wade. A good move, tight end. Utilizing him and potentially Josh Derry as the 1-2 might be the play in this spot. Wade did a very nice job a year ago after coming over from Maryland. He's also similar to Terrence Carter at Texas Tech, where he's more of a squatty physical option. I think Barnett would be able to utilize him well up the seams, and that might end up being where he finds some success. Now, the big question mark on this offense outside of the wide receiver position is the offensive line. Preston Cushman returning will help. Owen Spell returning, fine, but otherwise, it's a lot of turnover around here, and they're going to need to find some answers. Potentially, Brady Wayburn from UConn will be an answer at one of the guard positions. Henry Tabansi from Buffalo, I liked him in the MAC. How will that translate when you're facing off with like a Texas Tech or a Utah defensive line group? That remains to be seen. Cooper Terpstra, likely a center option, probably the starter coming over from Michigan State. Outside of that, it's a lot of questions. So we're going to have to wait and see somewhat. But I do feel decent. I think you might end up seeing one of the tackle guys kick inside to be able to play a guard role in addition to Terpstra and Wayburn. Defensively, it was a better unit than you would have thought a year ago. I really anticipated that they would kind of get beat up pretty good here on defense. So I kind of early in the year started playing against them. And that was a fool's errand, I'll be honest. Alex Grinch did a very good job with this defense. did a very good job with this defense overall. Malachi Lawrence is going to be the biggest loss, graduating 7 sacks a year ago. I think they're going to end up relying on Akron transfer Bruno Dahl to pick up some of that pass rushing slack, along with Brad Gurley Jr. is with a middle pass rush, trying to get some pressure up the middle. RJ Jackson returning, Isaiah Nixon returning off the edge. Going to need some more production out of him. Horace Lockett is a absolute space eater in the middle, and that's going to help them out. They are going to need to continue to hold up well against the run. They did a solid job there. They did a very nice job with their tackling. They were fundamentally sound overall a year ago. It'll be interesting to see what the talent level of Ken Talley has here coming over from Arkansas. He's kind of bounced around after being a 4-star. Hadn't really realized that talent. So be interesting to see what some of these guys do. Maybe it's a Jesse Harold or an Artavius Jones that come from a Miami or a Florida State that end up rounding into form and showing some of the promise that their recruiting aspect promised to them when they first entered from high school. Linebacker wise, Lewis Carter's going to be very important to this and holding this together. Kozlowski was good a year ago. He kind of held down the fort. Kelly Lawson kind of split work, but they lost a good chunk of the front end of this unit. So can Khalil Culsberth take over one of the spots? Does Tackett Curtis or Rashad Henry come in? I would probably put my money on Culsberth coming over from Old Dominion, having a pass rush capability, kind of being a well-rounded player, and with his experience, being able to get some stuff taken care of. That was not a particularly great Old Dominion defense. Granted, JMU's kind of beat up Old Dominion for a few years now, so kind of tough on me with that one. Defensive back wise, I love the addition of Caleb Flagg. I really do. Damari Henderson played well for them a year ago. Jaden Bellamy, solid player at corner with Antoine Jackson. So keeping those guys together, they do have to replace Phillip Dunham out of the free safety spot, replace some depth at safety overall. That's where your Flagg, Ty Bartram come in. They're going to be battling away there. And then you bring in your Jalen Duffy as a corner out of, that looks like North Dakota State, who's going to be important for your depth at the cornerback positions. Overall, I think UCF has improved. I still think they're going to have some problems with offense and how effective they could be on it. But I'd imagine we see a jump here in year 2 under Scott Frost. The Morgan Scalley era begins at Utah. Key to this thing, from a DFS standpoint, and that's what I usually look at this lens through, they are very good at quarterback. Devin Dampier, good quarterback, played really well out of New Mexico State a year ago. Played very well. Did a good job under his former offensive coordinator. Now not there. But also, Bird Ficklen came out of nowhere and just racked up rushing production and touchdowns. So the combination is nice to have for a team perspective and a pain in my butt for a DFS perspective. Because they were as the year went on, Ficklen started getting more and more packages put in for him. I think Ficklen's the long-term future and long-term answer here, but Dampier is still going to see the field plenty in this offense. The backfield was a pain in the butt as well because Nakari Rogers kept scoring touchdowns while Wayshawn Parker moved them down the field. It was very Friday Night Lightsy to an extent. I think Wayshawn Parker is the guy this year with a 40 to 50% carry share in this backfield. Daniel Bray takes on a little bit more work, and Chavez Soto is just there. I don't think you see Chavez Soto end up being a um, answer in this backfield whatsoever, not taking on Akari Rogers' role, in my opinion. I think it's the Wayshawn Parker show. He was absolutely scintillating in this offense whenever he got the football. He needed it more. I'm hoping that they end up relying on him a good bit more this season. Ryan Davis was a slot wide receiver. He was heavily peppered by Devin Dampier. He's clearly their favorite target. He now moves on, and we end up with an interesting situation. I think Larry Simmons takes a jump. He played pretty well in limited action a year ago. They're going to need one guy they rely on. Tobias Merriweather is all substance, oozes talent level, but does nothing. I think Whittemore ends up getting a little bit of a bump here. I'm interested in seeing what the transfers do, though. Braden Pagan is a nice target out of Utah State. I do think it's possible he ends up taking over the Ryan Davis role and gets most of the target share. And I'm also interested in Kyrie Scholes. I really like this kid. He was a good, big outside target, physical at San Jose State. Arguably, I prefer Scholes as far as in a different offense to a Danny Scudero, who I know put up the monster numbers, but I thought Scholes was a standout for San Jose State. He will pair in very well, very nicely with Larry Simmons. Optimally, I would like to see a trio on the field, a three-man set of Simmons, Pagan, and Scholes. But we'll have to wait and kind of see what they decide to go with and who pops off. Tight end wise, the loss of J.G. Buchanan is going to loom large. I think Buchanan was a difference maker and a guy that could end up being the number one option in this offense, and losing him is going to hurt. This has been tight end U for a while now. Dallin Bentley was a very good, productive target for them as well. So losing both of them is going to be hurtful, to say the least. They do know Noah Benny. He was previously here as a transfer, so they might be able to be comfortable with him. I think Hunter Andrews ends up taking on a larger role here as the kind of the next man up. I'm fairly certain there was a Hunter Andrews. This isn't the same one, but there was a guy named Hunter something that was at Utah State. I want to say it was Hunter Andrews, who was a really good wide receiver for them. But this is not him. So I think Hunter Andrews ends up realizing some of that potential, though. Likely slides into the number one role, but I do think we end up seeing some more 3 wide receiver sets versus 2 tight end sets because of the tight end talent. They did try to transfer Otto Tia over, which is funny that he's listed as a blocker, considering he was a wide receiver at Utah State, and he just never really translated to the offense personally. Offensive line is going to be it's going to rely on their depth a ton. But, I mean, they had one of the best offensive lines in the country a year ago. Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu, I would argue, was the best tackle tandem in the country. And both are going to the draft, both likely first-round picks. All 5 starters are now gone. Keith Olson, though, should be able to step in as a quality option right out the gate. Reese Parmenter will step right in. I would expect Roger Alderman to step right in. So not crazy problematic from that aspect. I do have some questions. I think Oba is going to end up stepping right into a tackle role. I wouldn't be shocked if a few of these other transfers and younger guys. This could be a building year for this offensive line, but I still think the talent is there to be very good. What happens with this defense will be interesting because a lot of guys that were very good went to Michigan with Kyle Whittingham and did not stick with Morgan Scalley. That is a concern. But Cash Dillon's a stud coming back. Lance Holtzclaw, very good. I think we see their roles expand, and they're the next in the long line. Logan Fano is a tough loss. The key to this thing is John Henry Daly being gone. I don't love that he's not there. If you bring that kid back with Jonah Leai and you bring back that defensive line and these guys don't transfer, this thing is suited and booted and ready to compete. So now you're going to rely on your Ethan Day. Ethan Day was really good at North Texas a year ago. I would not be shocked if he ends up stepping right into that defensive tackle spot and plays really well right out the gate. Same thing with Jerome out of San Jose State. They've got some talent that came in specifically in the middle of this defense to pair with your Dillon and Holtzclaw that if they take their next step could still be very good. I think there's a little drop off from the pass rush standpoint, but they can still be very good. Lander Barton, tough loss for my money. DeMooney, fine. Jonathan Hall will hold this thing down, though. But it's going to rely upon the guys that are still in the room to be able to step up with your Cyrus Polu, Trey Reynolds, Elijah Ellis. I think you're going to have a lot of competition here for these spots in the linebacker room to pair with Jonathan Hall. Defensive back-wise, good unit. Teo Johnson leaving, I don't quite understand, but maybe the money was just a lot better there. Jackson Benny is going to be a great safety for them again. Blake Cotton, Smith Snowden has now left and gone to Michigan. It's going to end up coming down to a few things. How did the transfers play at the cornerback spots? Akron transfer Elijah Reed, very, very talented. Do like that pickup to be able to pair in there with Elijah Davis potentially, maybe James Chenault coming over from South Florida. I think Marcus Wimberly from Oklahoma is going to end up sitting a year, maybe see the field a little bit here and there. Ultimately, I would say the offense is still very talented. There might be some bumps in the road along the offensive line, but the defense should still be fairly stout given Morgan Scalley's background and knowing these guys. So the defensive line should be good. Linebacking core should be good. And then they'll just fill in the defensive backfield, although there are some weaknesses compared to a season ago. Rich Rod, he's turned this roster over 3-4 times, it feels like. The quarterback position was interesting a year ago. Nico Marchiol expected to be the starter, got banged up. Didn't necessarily, in my opinion, fit the offense. I thought Scotty Fox played well in his limited action. He's just not ready. And to be honest with you, I think Michael Hawkins fits this offense perfectly. There is not a better fit in college football for Michael Hawkins Jr. than Rich Rodriguez's offense. He is extremely mobile. He throws the ball pretty well. And he's good enough to move this thing around. I love the pickup of Michael Hawkins to be the Pat White of this offense. Now, he needs a Steve Slayton. And I was moderately disappointed. I'll be honest. Ty Edwards was expected to be the guy at one point. Like I feel terrible for this backfield and how it shook out a year ago. You know, it was supposed to be Ty Edwards at a point. It was supposed to be Jaheim White for sure was supposed to be it at one point, but he got banged up. Dior Hubbard came out of nowhere and played great in his limited action. Sincere Bowers played well at various points. I mean, they just pieced this thing together. A little disappointed in Jaheim White leaving, Dior Hubbard leaving, Bowers leaving. I would have expected one of them to stay. So moderately surprised at the turnover there. And I saw somebody talking about this the other day. I kind of chimed in on it. Was Cam Cook. He had one heck of a season at Jacksonville State. And that's to be expected. He was good at TCU early and kind of lacked that long speed and that breakaway ability. I mean, the man had almost 300 carries at Jacksonville State a year ago. He was racking up 150 to 200-yard games left, right, and center. Do I think he can continue that here? Probably not. I just feel like I've seen it at TCU, and the long speed and the wiggle just wasn't there. This is a better offense for a running back to play in. So I do expect him to succeed. And I think they don't really have a choice unless Amari Latimer just comes in and blows the doors off. I just don't think, I think expecting Cam Cook to be Steve Slayton is wrong. And expecting him to repeat this 16, 1,200 yard season is probably wrong. So I don't know that Cam Cook can continue it. I think he's the favorite coming into camp and coming out of camp likely, and he probably gets the first crack at things. I just don't know that he's going to be as good as we would hope he could be or would be, given what I saw at TCU in the same conference here. Wide receiver wise, they don't use these guys whatsoever. Hence, Cam Vaughn left and went to Miami. He's going to end up being a backup and barely used. Rodney Gallagher, very similar. Jeff Weimer had some moments here and there. I remember the 90-yard touchdown. There's 0% chance that Jaden Bray is still eligible. Wouldn't believe it one bit. He was a backup anyway. Oren Singleton, he had a nice year at Eastern Mich, if y'all remember, 2 years ago. But the wide receiver room just turned over. It needed to be. It wasn't very good. I think, if anything, we're looking for a Cam Vaughn replacement. And I would imagine that replacement probably is Prince Strahan. It looks like Strachan, but it's Prince Strahan. He filled that similar role of field stretcher at Boise. It was never going to work out at USC. He's not talented enough for that, but he is a long speed field stretcher. So I think Strahan ends up being the top option here. John Nider, fine player, but he'll just kind of run wind sprints here and there. DJ Epps maybe is the guy that if Strahan doesn't work out, Epps ends up working out. I would imagine that Strahan or Epps ends up being the one in this offense. That's not saying much because they don't throw the ball very well. There is no Tavon Austin, I can tell you that. Which is funny because we're playing back to like 2010 here. I remember them playing in LSU with that team. Heck of a game. Tight end wise, Grayson Barnes, he was underutilized. They don't throw the football to these guys. They're just kind of there. Josh Sapp is the most talented guy coming over from Clemson. He probably sees the field. To what extent, it doesn't really matter, in all honesty, from a DFS perspective. Offensive line wise, it was a questionable unit for the most part. Don't really care that some of these guys are missing. Landon Livingston, it was an important piece to be able to hold on to. Cray is an important piece to be able to hold on to. That is probably the two most important guys. So being able to hold on to them is useful. And then bringing in Karsten Cassidy from the mass exodus at UConn, important. Kevin Brown, good recruiting pickup, 4-star tackle, is going to be useful for them. And then they brought in some more Jack State guys that they're very comfortable with from this coaching staff. With Bubba Grayson and Cameron Griffin, they likely fill in the guard roles. So they probably feel pretty good that they've probably upgraded for their money there. Defensively, this was a team I picked on left, right, and center because goodness knows they couldn't stop a nosebleed a year ago. And I don't know that they're going to be able to stop a nosebleed again this year, in all honesty, because Harbor Holloman was fine at Western Kentucky, but that's not saying much in Conference USA. Zeke Campbell, that Coastal defense was absolutely atrocious. I just remember JMU walking up and down the field against that defense, and the guys they had already weren't exactly good. So, yeah, I'm going to be picking on this defense again. I don't like this defensive line unit. The linebacker core, gone. And I don't like these linebackers either. I thought Afogo is fine at Bowling Green, but that's a MAC. It wasn't even the best linebacker at Bowling Green, in fairness. Stolsky, I had high hopes for at FAU coming over from Minnesota. I think he'll do a job, but I'm not going to say that he's going to be one of the, he's not going to be a star here. Stolsky, though, is an astute pickup for my money. I do like Stolsky. I will give him that. Fred Perry remains after being at Jack State. He had a fine season. He's just kind of a safe player. Everybody else is turning over again. And Kamari Wilson, fine out of Memphis. Otherwise, I'm not trusting any of these guys. I think we're going to pick on this West Virginia defense again. And I think they're going to struggle to stop teams on the ground, through the air. You're going to have it your way. It's full on McDonald's situation over here. So I would expect West Virginia is going to need to put up a lot of points, which is going to be good for us from a DFS perspective, because I do expect Michael Hawkins to have a very good season, given that I would say the weaponry is probably better on the outside, more improved than they had a year ago of what Scotty Fox was able to do. But I would play Michael Hawkins, particularly early in the season, probably naked. I'm not going to pair him up. Same thing I did with Scotty Fox, right? He's going to rip numbers, but as long as he's priced appropriately, I'm buying Michael Hawkins, and that's probably about it. Maybe Cam Coleman if he's priced well early in the season.